Hello, friends of the internet. My name is Austin Belzer, and welcome back to the Austin B Media Podcast. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Gal Balaban, the founder and extraordinary critic behind the blog FilmToppings. We're breaking down every brilliant and cringeworthy moment of the first season of the studio Apple TV Plus's scathing new satire of modern Hollywood. Gal, welcome to the podcast. Tell everyone watching or listening about your work at FilmToppings.
Thank you, Austin, for that introduction. So, FilmToppings is a website that I just started because I've loved movies for as long as I can remember. And the original iteration of FilmToppings, which I started through WordPress, the website, has actually been going on since around the time I turned 10. And now I'm about to turn 23. So, FilmToppings is celebrating its 13 years. And then I started to do it on Instagram around 2014. Was my Instagram when that began, and that's since been my central mode of communication, posting, etc. And since then, I've also had the amazing privilege of joining organizations such as First Reviews at places like TIFF, and just continuing to exercise my love of movies for as long as I can remember.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you on. But before we get into our discussion, is there a movie, show, album, anything else besides the studio you'd want to recommend?
Sure. This one's not exactly recent, but I'm in the middle of it now. I'm about to finish it. It's called Under the Bridge on Disney Plus / Hulu. And I mostly sought it out because I'm a fan of Lily Gladstone, but it's really interesting. And I love, all of these, murder mystery shows in the vein of True Detective, Mayor of Easttown, Sharp Objects, all of that stuff. And this is another great one. It came out about a year ago. So Hulu or Disney Plus on the international side. So I think it's very, very good.
For some reason, while you were talking about that, I was thinking of the Amanda Seyfried Peacock series that just came out. I was like, wait, no, it's not that one. It's not that one.
Oh, I don't think I actually know that one.
Long Bright Road, I think it's called.
Oh, I don't think I've heard of it, actually.
I have a feeling there's a reason we haven't heard of it. But yeah, that just kind of came and went. But yeah, it's interesting. When that came to my Apple TV Plus screeners account, I was like, oh, I'll eventually cover it. And then I just never did. So I'll need to check that out. Or no, sorry, that's Hulu. That's Hulu. I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah, it's also one that back when it came out, I heard great things, and I just kept putting it off.
Same. I'll have to check that out.
So now that I was finished with some of the newer shows that were on the top of my list, I was like, let me go check back some things from past years that I missed.
Yeah, I might go do that, especially since FYC season is upon us for Emmys consideration. And I know that was up for a lot of it.
I think Lily Gladstone was nominated.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, my recommendation, I'm waffling between three recommendations. I'm waffling between Predator, Killer of Killers. I'm waffling between that, which I didn't really enjoy. It's on Hulu now. So okay, I'll skip that.
I haven't seen it actually, but I heard. I think the review score was good. I don't know.
It is perfectly fine. It is the Predator version of Marvel's What If.
Okay.
Not to be reductive or anything, but is very.
What is your recommendation?
So I think I'll recommend Presence, which just came out on Hulu.
Yeah.
Brief synopsis of that one is basically the camera. You're in the POV of a ghost that is trapped in a house. I'll leave it at that. Stacked cast, Lucy Liu's in it. Yeah, Chris Sullivan is in it. I was trying to remember his name, but yeah, it's a Steven Soderbergh movie, which I'm always on board for. I actually recommended his other movie that came out this year, Black Bag, when I talked about Andor season
Hmm.
2 with Matthew Simpson. It's not stellar by any means, but I think it's a nice it's a nice character study into what you think would happen if a ghost just inhabited a house for. I
Hmm.
think it takes place over a year, 2 years, maybe. Um, it's on Hulu now. I think that's the easiest bar, the lowest bar of entry to it. I personally rented it because I didn't know it was coming out on Hulu um, until like a few weeks ago, which was after I rented it. But anyways, I recommend this. I'll always recommend the Steven Soderbergh film. Um, doesn't have a great story, especially when you figure out where it goes. Um, but if you just stick on the ride, it's pretty decent, I think.
Yeah, I really like this one. I wasn't expecting for it to be my thing, but like because it utilized the characters and their emotions so well, and not just being about spooky ghosts, even though the ghosts and their identity is like key to the storytelling. I thought it really surprised me. I thought it was really powerful by the end.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it because it's just not like the best piece of media you'll watch this year, but it in terms of experimental filmmaking, I think it's probably one of the best.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
but with that, let's get into the show we're here to talk about. The Studio season 1. Now all episodes are on Apple TV Plus. Um, I don't have an affiliate link here, but I will when this episode goes live. But so, Brainer, you should have it. It's the new HBO in my mind. But first things first, what were your expectations for the Studio season 1 going into it?
Well, I knew I was going to get good things because I usually don't start it like week by week. When the first episode comes out when it's a weekly show. So by then I had heard really good things. Um but yeah, like because TV shows are, a continuous experience and they take up some time, I'm sometimes picky. Like I don't want to watch something unless it's the best thing. And so I heard that about the studio and I knew that there were similar shows. Like there was the franchise that came out that I heard was much worse. But I
Much
heard that
worse.
this one was going to be really good. And within the first couple minutes, I knew that it was delivering on what people were saying.
You know, it's interesting you bring up the franchise because that's actually something I did watch, and
I
I've
haven't
heard
seen
a
it by
lot.
the
Well, now there's no point really, because
because of this show.
that, and the franchise, which the ending of that show sets up a wonderful season 2, got canceled by HBO, um, and is much more, I think, a send up of the Marvel studio system than anything. But as for my expectations, I really didn't have a lot of expectations. I'm like, okay, uh, Seth Green, Evan Goldberg, I know, or Evan,
Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, yeah.
yeah. I I always get his last name wrong. I'm like, I want to say Evan Green, but I'm like, no, it's
No,
uh,
you said Goldberg fine, but then you said Seth Green instead of Rogen.
oh, Seth Rogen, yeah. I've been watching too many TikTok clips. Um, but yeah, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, I kind of know what to expect based on that pairing. And surprisingly, I got something different from them that isn't just let's make a million jokes a minute. Let's actually make something that's actually meaningful and um, it has some problems that I'm sure we'll get into um, with its references, but I had pretty medium of the road expectations for this. Um, but yeah, um, with that, talk going more into impressions. You you binged this, right?
I watched it over like 5 days, maybe like 2 episodes a day, something like that.
Okay. Um, the reason I ask is because so they did this thing that a lot of streamers are starting to do, where they put out the first few episodes and then they go week by week.
Hmm.
But I guess what was your impressions after that first viewing, however many episodes that were?
So I think I watched the first two together. Maybe I like watched the first one like in the afternoon, and then I watched episode two that same evening. And I was hooked. I feel like it was something where anything could happen at every single moment, like every split second matters. And that comes from the long takes and and the high, I guess, anxiety, high stress environment that they're in, the constant, people yelling at each other, arguing, trying to get something out of each other. And that makes it really high intensity, but it also looked great and it was exciting. It was funny. Like genuinely, there's a line that we'll get into later in the spoilers in the first that like just Seth Rogen's delivery of it in the first episode is so funny. So it made me laugh. I also just couldn't tell where the jokes were gonna go. Um, and like the cameos were also really exciting. And I know that people are sick of fan service and franchises or whatever, but with this being like celebrities mostly playing themselves or heightened versions of themselves, then it's just so exciting. Like, who else agreed to be a part of this and poke fun at what they do? Um, and that was lovely.
Yeah, I agree. I've read a few like backing materials where like Seth Rogen did some interviews at like FYC fests and stuff like that. And it's kind of interesting to hear about the stuff they actually did cut from the show. I think there was, oh, I forget which director they talked about that they couldn't get, but I think they at one point pitched a Tarantino episode or something like that.
Man.
But getting,
Season two.
oh, yeah, maybe season two. Um, I think what makes this an effective show is really getting that real people in it, like Anthony Mackie talking about. I forget what they talk about in that episode. Uh, I think it's like a trailer or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
they're talking about a scene that they need to cut from the movie.
oh yeah. It's Ron Howard, the Ron Howard
Yeah.
episode, and it's just hilarious the whole way through. And I think you know. Answering a bunch of questions I have here, I think it really does a good job of balancing um, these two lines it walks, where
Mhm.
A is trying to be a satire, but then you'll hear Seth Rogen's character, um, I forget his name, but
Owen Remick? No, Owen? No, not Owen. Matt Remick. Sorry, Owen.
Matt Remick.
Matt Remick.
Yeah. Um, and where he'll make a joke about something like a Kool-Aid movie, and then the next time you see him, he's referencing Jiggly out of nowhere, or Jordan Peele. So clearly wants to live in these two worlds, and I think it balances that pretty well. What do you think?
Yeah. So when it comes to that balance, I think, like you said, there's a dialogue, and that's how the show proves that it's not just, hey, the industry is all about money and conglomerates and all that, but there is this underlying, like, how do I say it? So at the same time, the big theme is, like we said, conglomerates turning the film industry into a business, into a brand that goes on ROI, investments and returns. But there is this love of filmmaking because there's all these references. There's this character who loves Owen Klein, who made this indie movie called Funny Pages, right?
Yeah,
Or Parker Finn, who made this original Smile movie, and now is being asked to rip off his own movie. So I think there's that dialogue, those clashes between, I guess, what Scorsese was alluding to, however many years ago, when he was saying like, there's theater park cinema and quote real cinema, which, I'm not saying is meant to be taken completely literally, but there is, let's say director and script driven movies versus producer driven movies, and the way that clashes. And I think that's our very interesting gateway into Matt. Um, Without spoiling, um, I guess that's actually more of a spoiler discussion, but I think he tries to preserve himself there, when he's like suddenly proud of this position that he has. But I'll get more into that in the spoiler section.
Yeah, fair enough. There's. I feel like this is going to be a very short, non-spoiler section because I think
Mhm.
a lot of my pros and cons live in that section of the
Yeah,
discussion.
absolutely.
Um, so, really quick, let's talk about the main cast. Like, who did you like the most?
So I think, wow, everyone's wonderful here. I think Chase Sweet Wonders is a clear standout in a lot of the episodes because um, she's just so funny the way she challenges them, and like you don't go to most workplaces and see like people speak to their superiors like that. So it's so funny, like because she knows that they're erratic men who just make decisions based on anger and ego, and that she's able to put them in their place. Ike Barinholtz also, I thought he was like so wild and hilarious. But this is also, I think, my favorite Seth Rogen performances he's ever given because there's a deep fear of social ostracism that drives his decisions. Even if you only watch a couple minutes of his performance, it'll remind you very much of his performances and say The Interviewer, something similar. There's something much deeper beneath the surface that you get to understand really quickly.
I'm glad you mentioned the interview. I feel like no one really talks about that movie anymore.
North Korea didn't want us to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I bought I think I bought it when it came out or something like that, and now it's no longer in my digital movie library. So probably should have bought that one physically while I had the chance. But anyways, I think you keyed in on something that I really want to talk about. Is that it does have that kind of like how the satire and the deep love of filmmaking, the series overall tries to strike those two tones. There's two versions of the same character in each scene.
Mhm.
For instance, Ike Barinholtz's character, um, on one hand, and I don't think this is spoilers. Um, he's a crackhead, uh, quite literally. Like one scene, he's literally bumping lines in CinemaCon, um, and the next moment he is wondering how shitty of a father he is, or something like
Yeah.
that. There's layers. Like Shrek says that it's like an onion; it has layers, which I really do appreciate because I think you could write a version of this series that just is one note, like, oh, this is the crackhead, this is the new executive, and he's got to prove himself. Anyways, um, I think for that reason, I think Ike Barinholtz is probably the standout for
Yeah,
me
for sure.
because I think Rogan is fine in the main role. Um, but there were scenes in the show where I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually convinced that this guy is stressed out all the time. You know what I mean? Um, I don't know. It after the first two episodes, I'm like, okay, I feel like we breezed past a few things in his character development, but that's neither here nor there. Um, but as for Chase Y Wonders,
I think it's Chase
um,
Sweet Wonders, but now you're making me question it. I'm not sure.
however it's pronounced, I'm sorry, Chase. She is not my favorite, actually. That in the entire episode that is centered on her is by far the episode where I wanted to hit the skip button the most. Because I was just like, I almost considered dropping the show at that point. But
Are you talking about like the war episode between her and Ike?
Yeah, that's
Actually one of my favorites, I think.
Yeah, I did not like that episode, but we'll get into that a little bit in spoilers. Really quick. So, before we get to spoilers, let's discuss our rating, because I feel like there's not a lot of places we can go non-spoiler at this point. In fact, I probably gave out quite a few spoilers during the non-spoilers, so apologies for that. What's your rating out of 5 stars?
My rating for the studio is 4.5 out of 5. This is probably my favorite comedy show of the year so far. And there's usually a couple of great ones, but this has the luxury of just feeling so new and exciting and meta. And I think, it's, for me at least, not a lot of things really stood out negatively, because it's just when a show is so self-aware and focused on entertaining you, and in such a brilliant way, like not in a, like you said, like a dumb normal, Evan Goldberg, Seth Rogen way. Like I'm not even trying to downplay that, movies like Neighbors and Superbad are so much fun, but I think this is a very different kind of comedy, even if it embraces the same kind of laughs sometimes, like the stoner aspects, like you said. And it's just the cherry on top that I love movies and like all the movie references and the sceneries and showing actually what it takes, but also like you said, the balances between the corporate and the creative side and the characters all being, at the end of the day, I think what makes this show from a great comedy to an excellent comedy is the cinematography and the scope and the long takes and how big everything feels and how beautiful it all looks too.
Agreed. I'm gonna go 4 out of 5. Because I think, for me at least, the character development and story could use some work. How long are these episodes?
Each one's like half an hour, I think, 30 to 40 minutes, right?
Yeah, see, I would need an hour long. I know people say hour-long comedies don't work, but
I think they do. There's just not a lot of them.
Right. And Apple TV Plus seems to be doing a lot of 30-minute comedies. I would love to see an hour-long version of this, because I feel like in certain episodes, really critical character development moments don't get the time that they need to. And given that this show is, how many episodes are there in this show? There are 10 episodes, and I still don't feel like we really settled in to the series yet. Like, who is Matt Remick? Who's Patty? Who's Quinn? I really don't feel like we got a feel for that. I feel like we lost that towards the end of the season. But everything else is top notch. I think they really, Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen really set themselves out to be like, let's make something that is both reverent and irreverent of modern Hollywood. Let's take our personal stories, from being in Hollywood, 20 years at least, and make them into a show that I think people really connect with. Now, some of it is really inside baseball, like really inside baseball, to the point where I don't know if I'd recommend this to the average viewer that isn't reading the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and Deadline. But I would recommend it to those people, because there are very ripped out of headlines scenes in this show. But other than that, I think season 2 could possibly be a 5 out of 5 for me. I just need them to take more time. I know people say, "Oh, don't take 3 years off or whatever," but I'd actually be fine with it. Um,
3 years isn't very long. We don't need a new season of a show every year. People forget like how long movies take in their sequels. Like the bigger these are and the more expensive they are, like the longer it takes to make them, and I'm fine with that.
sure, and I will say I don't think we need something every year, but for a show like this, that's where I'll caveat. Like for something like Invincible, okay, I'm gonna need you to do that every year. Um,
Wouldn't go that far, but
um, but in a for these specific ones, I would really like 3 years to pass between each season so that we can get more insider knowledge and more ideas on what modern Hollywood looks like. Um, but I'm sure if I was to pitch season two, it would probably be terrible. But I'll leave that to the bigwigs at Apple TV Plus and and Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. So, um, and with that, this is going to be your official spoiler warning. Um, So, quick heads up for those who haven't seen the first season of the studio yet. We're about to go into detail about the show's plot and everything in between. So, if you want to avoid spoilers, you can skip ahead to the chapter marked final thoughts or outro or social media plugs in the episode's description. Um, but with that, that's your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it, get out of here. Subscribe to Apple TV Plus. There's lots of shows and movies to watch on there. Um, and I'm sure if you're going to be buying an iPhone or a MacBook or an Apple TV device, you get 3 months free, I think. So, um, with that said, let's get into spoilers. Let's start with the pilot. What are your thoughts on Matt's decision to buy and kill Martin Scorsese's Jonestown murder project?
let me just say that if that was, I would kill for that to be real. Like a Martin Scorsese
Same.
directed Jonestown movie sounds incredible. Like, um, yeah, I would if that was Scorsese's next movie. Ooh, yeah, that sounds fantastic. But at the same time, this very much introduces us to who Matt is. Because Matt is someone who comes into the studio and he's like, I want to make a change, right? I want to make films, not movies, right? He says something like that. Um, but he also, we very much get a sense that he's afraid of social rejection. He doesn't want to be alone. He doesn't want to be left out. And his decision to buy and kill Scorsese's passion project it doesn't even come from, I think this other idea is better. It comes from, I don't want my boss to yell at me. He doesn't want his boss to be mad at him because he just can't deal with that situation. And that maybe fills us in on, who he was as a kid, as a, being a movie nerd, maybe having been ostracized or bullied when he was younger. Um, and yeah, he comes in with good intentions, but he immediately, becomes the thing he hates because he is he is just so afraid of not being liked. Of and this happens again later because we can talk about um like Ron Howard, for example. He wants to give him he's afraid of giving Ron Howard a no because of the off chance that Ron will be mad at him. And this generates a whole conflict because he keeps throwing other people under the bus. And if he had just given the guy the note, but it very much informs us about who Matt is. And and I think, he does at the end of the day end up, succumbing to the corporate machine because he's just too scared to be true to what he thinks is himself. And it's funny to see like how he keeps messing things up because he messes up the one take because he's so silly. Because his car is blocking the shot, or he sneezes, or he's talking. He's like, it's like at the end of the day, he is his own worst enemy. He is the one thing in his way, and he can't seem to get out of his own way because he just needs to be liked and noticed.
Yeah, I'd very much agree with that. Yeah, for the Jonestown project, I would love to see it too. Although I don't think I could sit through another 3-hour Scorsese movie. Um, I love Scorsese, but man, hire an editor, please. I beg you. Um, but I know he has an editor. That's probably facetious of me to say,
He's a brilliant editor.
um, but anyways, that aside, um, I think my thoughts on the killing of the project. Um, I think it is. I don't know. It's just. I think it's wrapped up too neatly. Um, I think maybe maybe I don't know enough about the studio system. Maybe this happens a bunch where somebody will commit to buying the spec script and then killing it. Um, but I felt like I don't know. It just felt unrealistic to me. Um, but then again, I haven't been in a boardroom of a studio, so maybe that's something that actually does happen. Um, Stranger things actually have happened. I see a lot of blacklist scripts that get bought but ultimately go nowhere. So maybe that's where it's coming from. But yeah, as for Matt himself, I do think, like you said, it is a reflection of his character, of the narcissistic tendencies he has. Um, he just wants to look good to his boss. So he's like, let me see how I can turn this into the Kool-Aid movie. Um, Make it the ultimate blockbuster movie I can. Um, but outside of that, yeah, it just didn't feel really realistic to me. But again, I haven't been in those boardrooms, uh, so yeah, I don't really have a lot more to add to that. I wish I did, but you said all my points. So, uh, so with that, I guess let's get to Patty. You know, she's fired in the first episode, but then returns as producer. What are your thoughts on the dynamic between the two?
Let's talk about Patty. Catherine O'Hara is incredible here. She's fantastic, and there's the perfect dose of her. Like you get to meet her at the exact right time, and she gets thrown out by Bryan Cranston's character, but you can tell that she still has a song to sing. She still has some things to prove and some loose ends to tie with some people in this job, and she's very much like a mentor to Matt. Like she's the person who brought him in and taught him everything that he knows, and almost like his his work, his mom in the job world or whatever.
Mhm.
And she very much likes him, but she's like, Matt, why are you doing this? Get a hold of yourself. Like why you throwing me under the bus? And she genuinely like does care. You know, she's working on this Sarah Polley project, or she produces Open, directed by Zoe Kravitz, which also I don't even know what this is about, but I want that as a real movie. But like, you can tell that she's genuinely excellent at her job, and she's just, again, she has more to prove. She wants back in because she's not quitting, but she isn't quite willing to toss Matt under the bus for this, which I think is kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and you know, she's kind of the look we get into old Hollywood, you know, in a sense of how it used to work. I think maybe she came up through the 50s or 60s through the studio system. Maybe she actually reminds me of the old Paramount boss that just got ousted. What's her name? Paramount boss.
I don't know, but I do know that she was to an extent inspired by Amy Pascal, who is I think still the current head of Sony Pictures, but I could be wrong.
Yes. I got that too. I was like, I thought for a minute when they were going to talk about her firing, I thought they were going to talk about like leaked emails or something about like a Spider-Man project or something. But maybe they couldn't get that past legal clearance. But but yeah, I agree mostly with you. That's going to be the theme of this episode. Is I agree, but I do think I wish we got more time with her to develop her character, because to jump forward in the season towards the finale, she intentionally sabotages CinemaCon for them. With Griffin Mill calling Matt Bellany, Matt, the podcast guy, to come and see Griffin Mill just completely shit-faced. Pardon my French. And I wish we got more development of her, like deep-seated, like, I don't know.
Her grudge.
Yeah. Because we don't really get to see that until that episode. Like there's hints there. I don't know. But between Matt and Patty, I really like their relationship. She just was kind of the sounding board, I think. And I thought that was nice to see. You know, I don't think it's necessarily a realistic relationship, but like I don't think Avi Arad and Amy Pascal are conferring together on Spider-Man movies and getting advice from one another, as Spider-Man 3 will no doubt show us. But yeah, I thought it's a nice relationship that we don't normally get to see in Hollywood. So kudos to Seth Rogen. I almost said Seth Green again. But getting into the business of Hollywood, let's talk about the Kool-Aid movie. What did you think of that storyline and how it commented on the current state of Hollywood being driven by IP?
I think it's incredibly timely. I think it says everything about the industry, that we have certain key words that have turned into indications for profit, right? Like franchises and IPs are what are driving this. And this is an interesting shift that we've really seen in the last, I don't know, it's always been happening since, I don't know, the 80s or whatever, but it's definitely especially gotten worse since the pandemic, because people have been incredibly picky on what movies they want to see. So what do they go to first? Things that they know. Now, what's the highest grossing movie of the year right now? Minecraft movie. What does that movie do? It literally takes the creatures in its property, makes them CGI, has his live action character is next to them talking. And that's what this Kool-Aid movie within the studio is seeking to do. So it's crazy that, like, they probably knew that the Minecraft movie was going to come out around this time, but it's still crazy how timely that was. And I also think, like, Seth Rogen has openly admitted that Barbie is one of the movies that changed everything for the way they approach this show. Barbie being a movie that was partly successful because it's a huge IP, but also like it kind of reinvented what that means, what a 4-quadrant movie means, right? So when in the first episode, when they bring the video to Bryan Cranston, and it's like this mindless video of the Kool-Aid man, the CGI Kool-Aid man doing this sensei dance. I forget what it's called. He's like, this is brilliant. This is exactly what we need. But then it turns into the Kool-Aid man's a father, and he's trying to teach his way. It's like him becoming a role model to the Kool-Aid girl who is his daughter. It's trying to be more than just, dumb Kool-Aid CGI. But, these movies with big CGI creatures with just one key word that reminds people of something they've consumed before, whether it's Barbie dolls, Minecraft, or even Lilo and Stitch right now. Those are the movies that are driving the box office at the moment, even more than I don't know, even more than even sequels sometimes are very hit or miss when it comes to the box office. Indiana Jones, those two words weren't enough to turn back a profit. So sometimes you need something like as dumb and accessible and family friendly as just Kool-Aid, and approach it as like literally as like a CGI Kool-Aid man. Like that just made me think very much of like Minecraft, Lilo and Stitch, the Smurfs, all these things that we get recently. Also, I had this thought yesterday because I was hearing Seth Rogen and his actors with Jason Segel. Nicholas Stoller is hired in universe to direct the movie, right? And Nicholas Stoller also directed Neighbors, which stars both Seth Rogen and Ike Barinholtz. So do you think Neighbors exists within the universe of the studio?
Yes, 100% yes. Because if Smile exists and like Funny Pages exist, I guarantee you like Neighbors exists.
Particularly with Seth Rogen's face. And then Matt Remick comes out and he's just like, I'm not related to that guy at all. So Seth
You could
Rogen
even
just
have an episode
exists
about that.
and has contributed to much of the Kool-Aid director's success in the universe of this movie.
Yeah, you could have a whole episode in season 2 about that. And I'm glad they didn't go for that joke, by the way. Like in the first season, at least. Because I think that was like the first episode they talked about the Kool-Aid movie, and then they don't touch it till episode 5.
Yeah, so in episode 7, we get back to it because there's the whole casting debate, which I thought was hilarious. First of all, Ice Cube being the Kool-Aid man. I'm wearing an Ice Cube shirt now, specifically because he's in the show, and I thought he was fantastic. Like his monologue, like the Kool-Aid man is black. Like you suddenly have a feeling that like ever since he's been cast, like the Kool-Aid man has come to mean so much to him. But at the same time, it also shows you the other end of it, like people just overthinking identity politics, like because obviously this is still very much a thing, and we still see it. Like for example, Holly Bailey when she was cast as the Little Mermaid, and the amount of insane hatred that she got just for playing Ariel. But then like I don't know, sometimes like people overly approaching identity politics. Like if we make these characters black and these characters Asian, what does that say? And like at some point it's like it does make fun of white people or people who are non-black or not part of that community being like overly afraid of being offensive, and sometimes things are maybe not as offensive as they think. So I thought that whole debate was really fun, but also him just standing on stage and yelling at Matt like "fuck AI" at the end, which obviously speaks to what's going on now. But Ice Cube was, I thought, just hilarious in that episode, and I'm so glad that they set that up to actually bring him in too.
Yeah, and I thought that episode where Ice Cube stars in it, he goes into the recording booth, and I thought, oh, this is going to be how they trap Matt into like keeping him on the movie, is because he talks to him in the studio, and I'm like, oh, those mics are on. I guarantee you those mics are on and recording. So I thought instead of the AI thing coming out, I thought it was going to be somebody's like leaked. Somebody from Ice Cube's team leaked the conversation the two had in the recording studio or something, which actually would make it a lot more relevant with like all the leaked audio we hear from sets nowadays.
Yeah, Tom Cruise and whatever.
Yeah,
like Matt Remick yells racist remarks at Ice Cube.
Yeah, that would 100% be something I thought would happen in the series. But yeah, as for my thoughts on the Kool-Aid storyline, I really liked it. And I liked how little it's ever mentioned in the show. Like we only get 2 mentions of it, and then it's done, pretty much. We get mentioned in episode 1, which was like, here we need a director for this Kool-Aid movie, and then episode 7 we need to cast it and bring it out to I think San Diego Comic-Con is where they unveil it, right?
I think so. I think it was that, or it was somewhere. Yeah, it was some Comic Con where they reveal Ice Cube's casting as the Kool-Aid
Yeah.
Man.
And I was just like, I think how they handle the project as a whole in this movie series. I really like how they do that, because I'm just like, okay, that makes it much more interesting, because a studio doesn't just work on one movie at a time. I mean, look at the Disney studio slate and you'll see like 15 projects they're working on in a year. So it's like, I really like that, just as part of that storyline. And as for how it comments on the IP-driven blockbusters, I'll have to agree with you. I think, it's really smart about how it tackles it. It's like, here are all the things that are happening in Hollywood right now on a platter. Here's a conversation about generative AI, and how it's currently being used to cut corners with animation. As we've no doubt seen in a few projects that aren't coming to mind right now. But yeah, I don't really have a lot to add other than just, it's a really smart way to tackle talking about IP. And
I'm sure we'll get more, because the Minecraft movie succeeded. I'm sure they're just counting down the days until they greenlight a Fortnite movie. Hopefully, because of this, they won't greenlight a Kool-Aid movie now, or else it'll be too funny. But I'm sure this won't
similar. I think they did something similar like the day after this came out.
Oh, really? They announced like a real Kool-Aid movie?
Not a Kool-Aid movie, but I think it was like a Matchbox Cars movie or something like that.
No. There's also like a Skibbity toilet movie.
Yeah.
Something
with Michael Bay. Yeah.
Michael Bay, of course.
But I guess I want to use that to jump the IP conversation to jump on the episode with the pediatric oncologist, where this is probably my favorite episode, by the way.
This is
with all these doctors saying like, what we do is important, and Matt's just like, no, what I do is more important than what you guys do, because when somebody's sick, what do they watch? A movie. When you go to the hospital, where do you go? What do you see? Screens. And the whole conversation of like, there's no original movies before, which I run into every single day of the week. I run into people exactly like these oncologists.
We're like, I don't know what to watch anymore because there's no good movies.
And the guy, that one
do your
guy
research.
Who's like, I got a 65-inch TV. It's better than any home theater. And I'm like, or better than an IMAX theater. And I'm just like, oh man.
I'm gonna punch the screen, huh?
I really did. But then I don't have a computer monitor and I need to work. So, I love that entire episode. It just, I think, perfectly encapsulated how I feel about people who try to say, oh, there's no original movies. And then I list off original movies, and then it's just like, well, but like there's like this whole resistance to the whole idea.
I'm like, first of all, I never understand this. When people say there's no good movies anymore, it generally makes me like upset. I'm like, do your research. Like, it's like saying there's no good sports games anymore. Like, just like watch the good teams or watch the sports that you enjoy. Like, I'm sure like if you at least did like, I don't know, research of the last 2 months, you would find something that you would be like, okay, I would give this a go, or I would go in theaters. Like, if you just are watching, I don't know, the commercials, and you only see How to Train Your Dragon commercials and Captain America and Superman and you're not really into action movies, okay, but like there's lots of other things. So I agree with you very much there. And yeah, I've gotten into that sometimes where I'm like, what do you mean no original movies? There's Nora, there's Brutalist, and like, how am I supposed to have heard about this? I'm like, I don't know, just like, open the internet or something. Like,
Yeah, like I you know what my recommendation is? I'm gonna give a recommendation, and maybe I'll clip this for TikTok just so I can to the people.
do it.
Here's an idea. Instead of subscribing to Netflix for 1 month, cancel your subscription to Netflix for 1 month and put that money, that $15 or $17, towards an indie streaming app like AMC Plus, Mubi, or what's another one? AMC Mubi. I wouldn't say Peacock, but they do have some good movies on there.
Let me just say, I haven't used Netflix in a minute. Like,
Yeah, I can't.
every now and then there's a Netflix original movie. Like, I'm not saying they're all good, but I watch them. Every now and then there's a Netflix original show. But like, it's hard for me to try and, because, I'm obviously, when I'm with family, friends, whatever, they always ask me, what do I recommend? I have Netflix because they know I watch a lot more than they do. And it's hard for me because I'm just not on Netflix as much. So if you only have Netflix, I can't help you as much um, because most of what I watch is like evenly distributed between a lot of things, HBO shows, Apple, Amazon. So I feel like you can't really be in the discussion as much as I am, which is fine. But it's like also, if I can't recommend, Hacks or whatever, Shogun or the studio we're shrinking to, like, what are we doing talking? No, but seriously, there's there's way too many streaming services
Yeah.
to see everything. But at the same time, I will say I don't use Netflix as much as I used to because I just don't think they have all the best content. They have Ozark, they have Stranger Things, they have I'm trying to think, Ripley, Beef. Every year they have one or two great shows. Three Body Problem. I'm missing out a lot of the great ones, but like I just feel like some of the shows that are at the center of the discussion aren't only on Netflix anymore, even if they started out being leading in the charge. But I will say on this conversation, I think it's funny because it's like, look, objectively, performing surgeries or, curing diseases, is it more important than producing entertainment? Yes, like objectively speaking. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not like coming to talk about medics different. Like I'm with you. Like if I like they could have been nicer and said yeah, like we don't have to, your thing is important in your world and our thing is important in ours, and we can, indulge in yours because you're here with us. Like, they could have been generous, but at the same time, the
They
way
didn't have to
he
be
took it
dicks.
so seriously, yeah, they were very much snobs to him because we're like, yeah, we're like if you take anything, like I don't know, um, any business is probably objectively less urgent than the art of not art the business of like saving lives and medicine and so on. But like, but they were snobs about it. But also he took it so seriously. But he's like, well, when you see movies here, but when you go here, you have screens, and he just like like that night with him was important because he was there with his girlfriend Rebecca Hall, who is I had no idea, one of many cameos who was great here, but he just ruined it for himself because he was a snob himself with his movie thing. I want to ask you, by the way, because there's so many cameos, and I think besides Scorsese, I didn't know about any of them showing up. Who were your favorites?
I think my favorite was Anthony Mackie showing up.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think the thing I love about this show is it allows people to be the asshole versions of themselves. Like, who would you be if you just weren't like if you were just hanging out with somebody, right? That's what I love about the show. Is Anthony Mackie's like, I don't want to give Ron Howard a note. Who am I to give Ron Howard a note? You know?
I think
Go ahead.
yeah, I think it's great because like you also think like a lot of these directors, like Ron Howard and Sarah Polley, Olivia Wilde, they they come with this with like professional acting experience. Like you think Sarah Polley's been acting since she was a child. So that's what she was doing before she became, an Oscar-winning director, filmmaker, writer. Um, but also some of the ones like I think Parker Finn hasn't had acting experience before this, and he felt like he was a natural on camera. So I had to look that up to see if he had acted before. But also, yeah, like a lot of these people having fun with the I guess the public perceptions of them, like
Mhm.
like Ron Howard, like him, like like I'm sure he saw that and he's like, yeah, I'm down to portray this egomaniac version of myself, or Martin Scorsese like acting like he's crying because a project of his just got canceled. It's funny, like or Olivia Wilde, like literally like stealing things. Like it's fun to see these people let go of their egos and them being the real versions of themselves.
Mhm.
But
I
go ahead.
sorry. I just want to comment.
Go
Um,
ahead.
I'm surprised that Olivia Wilde episode did not get cut. I thought that would have, like, with the controversy surrounding Olivia Wilde recently, I thought that was gonna just be cut out of the show.
I think she probably knew about it, but maybe it's been like just the right amount of time where she's ready to have fun with it, and she's like like she knows that people are like probably remember this, I don't know, feud or whatever they perceived it as. So she's like, let me play with people's perception of me and have fun with it. And because, like we said, not a lot of these people are approaching it with ego. Um, Zoe Kravitz, I think, genuinely gave an amazing performance. Like that speech she has, where she's like, "I practiced this speech in the mirror so many times. I think Patty, I think Team Open, and I say good night." Or like she and Adam Scott like genuinely gave awards worthy performances in that episode. And I
Yeah.
want to say the Golden Globes episode really blew my mind because I just think about how many people you have to gather for those cameos. Like literally, Zack Snyder shows up. Anthony Starr, Erin Moriarty, Jean Smart is literally just there for a background shot where she's not even in focus. Like they probably had to have shot this around the time the actual Golden Globes were happening, and get all those people available. Ted Sarandos himself never acted before on camera, like we said, and it's like I think we it goes back to the long take discussion we were having, where there's a genuine, Seth Rogen has so many friends in the industry because he's Seth Rogen, but there's still this feeling of how did they do that? How did they pull this off? Not just in all these takes, but like the scale of it, making something look so true to the real thing, with as many people as they got together. It was just wow, and I just left that episode um, thinking like, how could they have put this together so seamlessly and never make you question that they didn't just shoot this at a real Golden Globe ceremony in Hollywood?
It, and well, I do know how that happened. I think I read something about it being like
Uh-huh.
pretty much exactly like how you said. Is I think they filmed around the Golden Globes, at a at a at a at a hotel similar enough to the Golden Globes that they could shoot there.
Oh,
Um, but
oh,
um, but yeah, I think that drives home one of the questions I wanted to ask. We've obviously talked a lot about the Ron Howard episode on the note, right? Um, how did you think that episode, or what did you think of that episode and what it says about creative collaboration and ego in Hollywood?
I think it also drives home this idea of like the personal in film, because it's something that we've become especially obsessed with, especially, people like us who love also the awards movies and indie films. We're obsessed with something that's true to the filmmaker's real experience, whether it's like Minari or The Fablemans or so on. We have a lot of like semi autobiographical movies lately, and in this movie, it's not necessarily because it's like about a criminal underworld, but it's like this scene specifically is like a tribute to his dead cousin who died when they were kids. I'm guessing which is fictional for how I don't know. Maybe it was, and I'm so apologies if there was, but it's like as soon as someone says that, no one wants to touch Ron Howard's vision. It's like, look, the movie needs to end. This scene is 45 minutes long. Can we just cut this scene out? But as soon as someone says, like, this is personal to him, we can't, talk around that. So I thought that was funny because we've already had that ammo of like a lot of movies coming straight from a filmmaker's personal experience, which is absolutely a positive. It just, I think, really well informs the discussion with Ron Howard here. And I think when it comes to like the collaborative nature, I think it also brings us home to like our tours and even the Scorsese episode, which creative freedom being such an important thing in the process. But it's also like there are movies every now and then. Let's say, I don't know, Megalopolis is an example where it's like, when does the producer or studio step in and say this is too much for a filmmaker to take on? Or like, when do we need to tweak some things? When is the director's vision? Maybe need to serve the general audience just a little bit, even if it needs to stay true to their intent.
Agreed. Yeah. And I would agree, especially on Megalopolis, because I can't see it because Francis Ford Coppola does not want me to watch it at home. There's no digital copy of that version. There's
really
no Blu-ray of that version unless you pirate it illegally.
I saw it at TIFF with him and Adam Driver and Natalie Emmanuel and Giancarlo speaking, and still I don't know if that was worth it because it was such a bad movie.
Yeah, like it would be a perfect movie I'd watch on streaming, and normally I don't advocate for that, but I'm like, dude, I would love to watch this at home. So if, anyways, that's a completely separate conversation. But yeah, I think I hate to just say I agree all the time, but I really don't have a lot more to add to what you said. I think it's like, I think that episode is very clearly a riff on The Fabelmans.
Yeah.
I think that movie very famously has a section in the movie where I'm like, does this really need to be in the movie? Do we really?
I don't mind the runtime in that movie, but it's definitely like, yeah, like a personal, like a child personal story. Also a movie starring Seth Rogen, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, as the in Steven Spielberg's eyes, through the lens of the movie, a douchebag kind of. But I won't spoil that movie for people who haven't seen it. But really quick, let's talk about Quinn. I know you said you liked Chase's character. So let's talk about it. What did you think of her character and her escalating war with Sal?
So I think quickly we learned that Quinn is a flawed person, but she very much deserves her position. And I think because of her age and because of her relative inexperience to people like Sal and Matt, she's often downplayed. But she clearly, she loves film. She comes with this, she's elevating what they're doing. She's like, I saw this movie, Funny Pages. Owen Klein would be excellent for this. This would be a great opportunity. But she wants to be heard, and she doesn't really care to hide that. She's not coming out of this from like, I want to be polite to my bosses. Like I said earlier, she wants to quickly put Sal in his place. And because she knows that he's, like you said, he's very worried a lot about his role and how he's going to look, whether it's as a dad or in his position. She's chill with, making him feel like he needs to change his ways and get his head out of his ass, as Quinn would probably say. And she really challenges him because Sal is kind of just, doing things as the machine would do them. He just wants to, do things, because it's his job and he's working for Griffin. And, I'm sure Parker Finn would make a very good director for this Wink movie. but she sees something more, and he doesn't really see her potential to deliver an equal potential to the discussion as him. So she really challenges him to not just see me, but also, allow me to make a difference here, and stop trying to trample all over all over me. Because um, I just think it's very funny the places it goes, and it escalates at the end with the burrito. Oh my god, that shot is. And I think Apple released recently the BTS of that shot with the burrito and the
Yeah.
crash, and it's hilarious.
I think for my thoughts about Quinn and Sal, I really like their relationship. It's almost like a father-daughter relationship, and I think that was very purposeful. Especially when you consider how much Sal was concerned in one episode about being a good dad. Um, I didn't like the war episode, but that's just because it turned the cringeworthy factor all the way up to 11, and I just get uncomfortable when it's like that. Um, which makes me turn things off pretty easily. But yeah, I just wish Sal and Quinn would listen to each other more. That was my only wish for the season. But speaking of that, moving forward to the end of the season, we get a two-part finale at CinemaCon, which was pure chaos. Do you think it provided a satisfying resolution for the season?
I wouldn't say the last episode is probably one of my favorites, but I did enjoy it. I had no issues with it. It's just like you said before, it's like this one is by far the shortest, like 20 something minutes. And it's like I selfishly wanted just a little more because it's because I'm enjoying this show so much and I didn't want it to end so quickly. As the season finale, I think it ended well enough because it gives Matt a moment of victory, and also like I again like seeing Patty have a last minute change of heart, um like Matt telling her like, no, if you sabotage this for us, we might get bought by this tech conglomerate. And she's like, oh no, I don't want to mess this up for you, Matt, because I love you. um and that was sweet. And I also loved all the I guess just journeying through Vegas and like seeing them actually there and everything. Like maybe it's just from a cinematography perspective, they made all those spots look super cool, even though I'm not like the biggest, Vegas is amazing person or something. But I enjoyed it. I think it was cool to have like, for example, Dave Franco just rambling on because he was high, but everyone thinks it's like him in character in the movie. So they like cheer him on as they're like, wow, incredible. So I loved that. I think honestly, I enjoyed this episode, but like we said, it was just so short to the point where I enjoyed the last one before this so much more, where they were actually at the party and Zoe Kravitz gets high because she didn't realize that the brownies or whatever were laced with however many doses, or maybe he like miscalculated the doses.
He miscalculated the dose.
Yeah, that's what it was. So seeing Zoe Kravitz like get increasingly more high was hysterical. And then Bryan Cranston, of course, Griffin, them having to carry Griffin. Um, yeah, so many great moments. And Dave Franco, of course, playing like a very stereotypical version of like himself, but it's like a version of like what his characters usually are.
Yeah, it was very Neighbors-esque Dave Franco, and he actually does
Exactly.
Yeah, and he does the season finale recap for that final episode.
Right, yeah.
In character, like, hey, Matt told me to tell you what's going on. Here's all the shit that's went down.
Yeah.
But yeah, the season finale was fine, I guess. Again, I really needed it to be longer than it was. Because there was a lot of moving parts. You had to win CinemaCon. So that's like objective A. Objective B is getting Griffin Mill to CinemaCon, who is absolutely shit-faced, and C, avoiding Patty from talking to
The
Matt
really good.
Bellany.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a little too much to neatly wrap up in 20 minutes. I found the season finale very convenient. I know people throw that word around a lot, but it's like, oh, really? They won CinemaCon because they just started chanting movies?
Yeah, I get that too. Like if I wonder, if I don't know. I wonder, like, would that actually go down? Like, would people like so enthusiastically say movies, or would they just go along with it? I don't know. Maybe.
Like maybe if you were at an AMC shareholders event, like AMC theater shareholder, that would work. Because don't even
I
get
feel
me
like I don't know.
started
I
on.
wonder, like, maybe if you're there, the experience of being there would just make you go along and be like, "Yay, movies!" But I feel like I don't know. It takes more for that audience to be impressed. You know, like imagine the headlines like Variety, um, Continental wins CinemaCon. Matt Remick, the chief creative executive, made everyone chant movies, and that was a true highlight of the convention. Like, I don't know. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
It was cute, like for his arc. I don't know.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it was very convenient and like ridiculous to the people who are writing the show, but nothing stops Amazon when they want a studio. Like
Yeah.
nothing. So good try, I guess. But um and what's funny? I actually recognized where somebody was, an influencer friend of mine who went to Vegas recently after seeing the show.
Mhm.
I recognized where she was, and I was like, "Hey, the studio, hell yeah!" Like,
That's awesome.
because it was like the same shot of the like roof, and I was like, "I know that roof. I saw it in the studio." Um, I
Mhm.
wish I had the DM in front of me, but yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily a realistic finale, but whatever, I guess.
It
Um,
was a cute emotional high.
yeah. But speaking of hot, well, maybe that's not the best transition,
Speaking
but
of high, the whole episode.
yeah, the whole episode where he's like, where he's calculating the grams, and it ends up being, oh gosh, like 10 times worse than he thought it was going to be. So, um, and we do get prime Bryan Cranston being very comedic Bryan Cranston in this show,
Mhm.
so I'm all for it. But but um, but let's talk about some other satires. How do you think this show, the studio, stands up against other Hollywood satires like The Player, Entourage, or Barry?
So I've never seen Entourage.
Neither have I,
It's
or
hard.
The
I can't
Player.
compare the studio to Barry. Barry is like a top 10 show of all time, probably. I don't think you can compare anything to Barry, and they're also very different. But I think Barry also satirizes it in a very, very funny way. Maybe not as on the nose, but still very. Look, I can't. You can't, after one season, compare the studio to Barry. Unfortunately, Barry is just, you can't compare most of us to Barry. Let's just put it at that. I feel like the player is a much more on par comparison, like minus the main character, doing some shady things. I feel like it's a good comparison because all the cameos, all the talk about the industry and stories and scripts. I feel like that's a great comparison. And again, like minus the criminal conspiracy, the studio could work as like a modern day The Player, which is a movie I love. It's like my favorite Robert Altman movie. And so yes, I like that comparison a lot, and I think it compares well. I don't think it's as good as Barry, but I think it's very unfair to compare it to Barry, because if you're comparing any show about acting or the industry or filmmaking to Barry, then you're just setting yourself up for disappointment, because that show set the bar unreasonably high.
Yeah, I mean Barry is so good. Even that last season, which wasn't that great, it kind of got lost in the weeds towards the end, where it's like trying to wrap up this whole show, and it's like very clearly needed another season to wrap it all up. But yeah, nothing compares to Barry. And I'd actually recommend Barry to anyone watching, because the same actor, Anthony Carrigan, in that show plays NoHo Hank, and he will be in Superman as Metamorpho on July 11th. So
that's right. Yeah, Anthony Carrigan's great. I don't think there's many weak spots in Barry. I think it's a wonderful show.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the studio really is its own thing for a lot of it. It's, again, like I said earlier, it's very inside baseball in a way that Barry is not. I haven't seen these other two. I haven't seen The Player. I wanted to, but then I forgot to watch this before I recorded our podcast together. But it's on Max, so I'll watch it some point this week. So I don't really have anything to compare it to. So I'll just say it's a pretty good show. I hope it gets a season 2. I don't think they've renewed it yet.
They recently did.
Oh, they did? They did renew it for season 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me fact check this live.
No, they renewed it because they released a video where it's like the scene from the first episode where it's like there's no new ideas anymore. It's like season 2 is coming out.
Yep. That was renewed on May 6th. Okay, so pretty recent. Well, not pretty recently. That was last month. But yeah, I hope a season 2 goes further with it. Like, I would love, them to take their time with it and just say, like let's parody the Minecraft movie or whatever. But I think that's all I really have to say about the studio. I've pretty much just agreed with you the entire time. So apologies to listeners or watchers if that was boring to hear my side of it. But
maybe next time I'll have to let you elaborate more on my thoughts.
Yeah,
or
maybe
vice versa.
Maybe you took what I was going to say, so we all, it's better if I just agree. But
great minds think alike.
Yeah, exactly. But thanks everyone for listening or watching to the Austin B Media podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you listened or watched a podcast. Leave a rating if you can on your favorite podcast app. Also review it. I hear that helps metrics. So, and now that you've listened to our discussion on the studio, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show in the comments below, on social media, on my Blue Sky at Austin B Media, or at Austin B Media, practically everywhere else, including Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Serialized, and Threads, on my Discord, or in the Patreon community chat. Gal, where can people find your work?
You can find me at FilmToppings on Instagram, YouTube, and Letterboxd, as well as at FilmToppings.com. And I've also done some great interviews with filmmakers and great talents at First Reviews on YouTube with a 1ST Reviews. And also here on Instagram, and firstreviews.ca is the review website. So I've been a part of that since for almost 2 years now, and they're a wonderful community. And yeah, thanks again, Austin, for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I've been your host, Austin Belzer. And until next time. Every dollar really helps, and even just sharing the show or leaving a review makes a big difference. That's patreon.com/AustinBMedia. I'd love to see you there. Until next time, thanks for being a part of the conversation.